in the fortress city that commanded the crossroads between civilization and wilderness, the masters of iron had established precedents for the systematic cultivation of power that would influence human societies for millennia. But raw military strength, however perfectly organized, was only the foundation upon which the greatest of all Assyrian kings would build something far more ambitious, an empire that sought to gather not just territories and treasures, but the accumulated wisdom of the entire known world. The royal hunt was ending as the sun set over the hills beyond Kalhu, 700 years before Christ. King Ashurnasirpal II lowered his bow and surveyed the day's kill, lions that would never again threaten the flocks of his people, their bodies testament to the divine strength that flowed through Assyrian royalty. But this was more than sport or ceremony. In the calculated violence of the royal hunt, observers from throughout the empire witnessed a demonstration of the systematic excellence that had made Assyria master of the ancient world. The lions themselves had been carefully selected, captured alive from the wilderness beyond the empire's borders, and brought to controlled hunting grounds where every aspect of the encounter could be orchestrated for maximum symbolic impact. Professional hunters had weakened the beasts just enough to ensure royal safety without eliminating genuine danger. Court artists positioned themselves to record each moment of the hunt on limestone reliefs that would adorn palace walls for centuries, transforming temporal spectacle into eternal propaganda. This attention to detail, this transformation of even leisure activities into instruments of imperial policy, characterized the Assyrian approach to power that had evolved from Shamshi-Adad's military innovations into something far more sophisticated. Under Ashurnasirpal II and his successors, Assyria had become not merely a military machine, but a comprehensive system for organizing human societies according to principles of efficiency, hierarchy, and systematic knowledge that extended imperial authority into every aspect of civilized life. The capital city of Kalhu, which Ashurnasirpal had built to replace ancient Ashur as the administrative heart of the empire, embodied this new vision of imperial grandeur. Unlike traditional Mesopotamian cities that had grown organically around temple complexes, Kalhu was planned from its foundation as a showcase of Assyrian power and administrative capability. The royal palace complex dominated the city's center, its massive walls rising nearly 100 feet above the surrounding landscape. These were not mere fortifications. They were canvases for the most ambitious artistic program the ancient world had ever seen. Miles of carved stone reliefs covered every interior surface, depicting scenes of royal hunts, military campaigns, religious ceremonies, and diplomatic receptions that proclaimed Assyrian supremacy to every visitor who entered the imperial presence. These palace reliefs served purposes beyond mere decoration. They constituted a comprehensive visual encyclopedia of imperial ideology, teaching lessons about power, authority, and divine mandate to audiences who might not share common languages, but could understand the universal symbolism of strength triumphant over weakness, order imposed upon chaos, civilization extending its boundaries into barbarian darkness. The king himself appeared throughout these artistic narratives as the focal point around which all imperial activity revolved. Whether hunting lions, receiving tribute from subject peoples, consulting with divine powers, or directing military campaigns, Ashurnasirpal was portrayed as the perfect embodiment of Assyrian virtues. Strong but controlled, ruthless but just, mortal but divinely appointed to serve cosmic purposes larger than individual ambition. But the most remarkable achievement of Ashurnasirpal's reign was not military or artistic, but intellectual. The creation of the ancient world's first systematic attempt to collect and preserve all human knowledge. In specially constructed library buildings within the palace complex, teams of scribes worked continuously to copy texts from every corner of the empire, creating archives that would survive the fall of Assyria itself, to influence scholarship for thousands of years. This library project reflected characteristically Assyrian approaches to imperial administration. Just as Assyrian armies systematically conquered territories and Assyrian engineers systematically built roads and fortifications, Assyrian scholars systematically gathered information that could enhance imperial effectiveness. Knowledge was treated as another form of treasure to be extracted from conquered peoples and concentrated in imperial capitals where it could serve imperial purposes. The scope of this intellectual conquest was breathtaking. Literary works from Sumerian and Babylonian traditions were copied alongside historical chronicles, legal codes, religious texts, scientific treatises, and commercial records from throughout the known world. Mathematical knowledge from different cultures was compared and synthesized. Astronomical observations were compiled into comprehensive star catalogues that enabled more accurate prediction of celestial events than any single tradition could achieve. Medical texts from various regions were collected and compared, leading to advances in surgical techniques, pharmaceutical knowledge, and understanding of diseases that had previously been treated differently in different parts of the empire. Engineering manuals preserved construction techniques from master builders whose innovations had created the greatest architectural achievements of their respective civilization. Most importantly, the library preserved historical records that documented the rise and fall of previous empires, providing Assyrian rulers with unprecedented insight into the patterns of political success and failure that governed international relations. These historical studies influenced Assyrian diplomatic and military strategies, enabling more sophisticated approaches to imperial expansion and maintenance than any previous civilization had achieved. The administration of this vast empire required governmental innovations as sophisticated as its military and intellectual achievements. The Assyrian Empire at its height controlled territory stretching from the mountains of Iran to the shores of the Mediterranean, encompassing dozens of different peoples, languages, and cultural traditions that had to be governed through a single administrative system. Provincial governments throughout the empire were staffed by professional administrators trained in Assyrian methods, but drawn increasingly from local populations who could serve as intermediaries between imperial authority and regional traditions. These provincial governors wielded considerable authority within their territories, but were held accountable through reporting systems that enabled central oversight of local administration. Regular inspections by imperial officials ensured that provincial policies conformed to imperial standards, while allowing flexibility for local adaptations that enhanced administrative effectiveness. Communication networks using mounted messengers and standardized record-keeping procedures enabled coordination of policies across distances that would have been impossible to govern through less systematic methods. The economic prosperity that resulted from this efficient administration transformed daily life throughout the empire. Trade networks, protected by Assyrian military power, enabled merchants to conduct business safely across vast distances, creating markets for goods and services that had never before been accessible to most producers and consumers. Agricultural techniques developed in one region were rapidly transmitted throughout the empire, leading to increased productivity that could support larger urban populations and more sophisticated craft specialization. Engineering innovations spread equally rapidly, improving transportation, construction, and manufacturing capabilities in communities that adopted Assyrian methods. Urban planning incorporated lessons learned from successful cities throughout the empire, creating more livable communities with better sanitation, more efficient layouts, and architectural styles that combined local traditions with imperial standards. The cosmopolitan character of major cities reflected the cultural synthesis that imperial unity had made possible. But perhaps most remarkable was the development of Assyrian approaches to cultural administration that sought to preserve local traditions while integrating them into imperial structures. Rather than imposing uniform cultural practices throughout their territories, Assyrian administrators recognized that diversity could strengthen rather than weaken imperial unity if properly managed. Local religious traditions continued to flourish under imperial protection, with Assyrian rulers often participating in regional festivals and contributing to temple construction projects that honored non-Assyrian deities. Legal systems based on local customs were preserved and supported as long as they did not conflict with fundamental imperial interests. Languages and literary traditions were maintained and even encouraged as sources of cultural richness that enhanced imperial prestige. This sophisticated approach to cultural administration enabled the Assyrian Empire to achieve levels of stability and longevity that purely coercive methods could never have sustained. Subject peoples who retained their cultural identities while benefiting from imperial prosperity and protection had strong incentives to support rather than resist Assyrian authority. The military innovations that had created the empire continue to evolve under imperial conditions that provided resources and opportunities for systematic experimentation with new techniques and technologies. Professional military academies trained officers in tactical and strategic thinking that incorporated lessons learned from campaigns throughout the known world. Siege warfare reached new levels of sophistication with the development of specialized equipment and techniques that could overcome any fortification system known to ancient military engineers. Cavalry forces were organized into increasingly effective units that could operate independently for extended periods while maintaining communication with main armies through sophisticated signaling systems. Intelligence networks provided Assyrian commanders with detailed information about enemy capabilities and intentions, enabling strategic planning that could anticipate and counter potential threats before they developed into serious challenges to imperial security. Diplomatic relations with peoples beyond imperial boundaries created buffer zones that enhanced security while providing opportunities for expansion when circumstances were favorable. As evening settled over the great city of Kalhu, as oil lamps flickered to life in the palace libraries, where scholars continued their patient work of copying and cataloging human knowledge, something unprecedented had been achieved in the organization of human society. Military power, administrative efficiency, and intellectual curiosity had been combined into a system of governance that could project authority across vast distances while preserving and enhancing the cultural achievements of every civilization it encountered. In the royal chambers where Ashurnasirpal and his successors planned the policies that governed an empire stretching from sunrise to sunset, the accumulated wisdom of ages informed decisions that affected millions of people across dozens of different cultures. The systematic pursuit of knowledge had become an instrument of power, as effective as the iron weapons that had first established Assyrian dominance. Under the eternal stars that had witnessed the rise of cities, development of writing, the creation of law, and the first experiments in imperial governance, the people of the Assyrian Empire rested peacefully in communities that combined local traditions with imperial innovations, creating a synthesis of human achievement that surpassed anything the ancient world had previously known. The empire of knowledge had reached its zenith, demonstrating that systematic learning could enhance rather than replace military strength, that cultural diversity could strengthen rather than weaken political unity, and that the careful preservation of human wisdom could create institutions that outlasted the civilizations that created them. Tomorrow would bring new challenges to imperial authority, new opportunities for expansion, and the continuous work of governing the most sophisticated political system the ancient world had ever seen. But tonight, in the libraries of Kalhu, where the intellectual treasures of humanity were preserved for future generations, the Assyrian achievement stood complete. An empire that had conquered not just territories, but knowledge itself. Our journey through the corridors of time continues, as Assyrian imperial methods inspire both imitation and resistance throughout the ancient world. Discover how Babylon, heir to Hammurabi's legal traditions, will rise once more to challenge Assyrian dominance and create wonders that will inspire legends for millennia. The final flowering of Mesopotamian civilization awaits.